Where are
People said I'm all wet, and I'm close. Right back behind me there is the Pacific Ocean. I got so jealous of Eric doing all these shows from Hawaii. I said, I'm going to try that. So I'm at a friend's house on the big island of Hawaii and having a great time. For those of you, nobody's getting snow yet, but man, is it nice out here. And with me tonight, of course, is Derek. That's a cross between Dieter and Eric. No, we got Dieter up in Toronto and Eric down in Phoenix and good old Elaine down in Orange County, I think, right, Elaine? That's where you live?
Orange County, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow, we are quite I love, I gotta say this is so cool. So you're in Hawaii, I'm up in Canada. Eric is holding down the fort in Arizona, and then we got Elaine in California.
Well, we could say we are international.
Yeah, we definitely got international.
Almost.
Yeah.
All right. So
yeah.
What are we
Well,
doing?
anyway, so tonight we got another great show. It's a Tuesday night for some of you, middle of the afternoon for me, and we just wanted to join you again for Fearless Flight Live for people who are afraid to fly, and anybody who you might know that's afraid to fly, or if you're just interested in aviation. We come on every week and we talk about all things aviation and related to fear of flying. And so we got our show coming up tonight. We're going to talk. We have a poll question we're going to introduce here in just a minute. And we're going to provide our link with the world's largest fear flying research study that we've got going now. We're getting a great response from all of you out there. Thanks for those of you who have participated so far. We got a bonus gift there if you do have the time to fill the questionnaire out. We're going to talk real briefly about the 201 class in Los Angeles on October 26th, coming up later this month. And we've got lots of signups, and we still got room for more. And we'll do our aviation news roundup. We've got a follow-up to something we talked about last week. And then no sooner than we get done from the Los Angeles class on the 26th, we're going to do a 201 in Phoenix on November 9th. So
that's right. It's really exciting, and we're getting a lot of emails and support about the class. So if you're watching the show live, or you're watching it after we have finished the live stream, make sure that you put your questions in the comments, because we are checking the comments on the post. Myself, Captain Ron, and Elaine, we're always here to help. So if you do have any questions, please let us know. And
just a quick mention on our Facebook group too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you haven't joined our Facebook group, please do that. Go over to our Fearless Flight or Facebook.com Fearless Flight. Join our Facebook group and introduce yourself. And if you got any questions, news, techniques, or anything, we're always interested in hearing that. So okay.
All right, there we go. And let's go on to. That's really cool. It's a poll question that came up this week, just a couple of days ago, in our Birds of a Feather group. And so we thought, it got a lot of responses and got a lot of really good feedback from people. So we thought, why don't we extend that poll question to tonight's show? And basically, we want to know from you, do you use any prescription medication when you're flying? And if you do, what is your experience? How does it affect you? Does it work? Is it not working? Do you have any side effects that maybe aren't as helpful as you would like? And most importantly, if you are taking medication, would you actually like to fly without it? So with that, I'm gonna give it back to you, Ron.
Okay.
Because
first we want to give everybody the link to the research study there, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna just pull that one up. There we go. And then I'll let you talk about it a little bit more.
We've had a number of people take this so far, and like we said, we'd like to get as many as we can, as quickly as we can, and we'll be publishing a report based on that. This is something that I introduced in 2004, and we thought it was a great time to update it and see what's going on out there now. It takes less than 10 minutes, according to the reports that we've got out there, and we really appreciate it. And this is where you get to participate in the future of Fear of Flying. We have several goals for this. One is to provide feedback to you all about where you stand in relation to other fearful flyers, ultimately, because you'll get a copy of the report. But primarily, we'd like to leverage the information here to get a little bit more support from the airlines. If you've looked into this as much as I have, you know that fear flying is pretty much ignored as a problem for U.S. flyers. But when you go over to Europe, there are several companies that have programs over there. So we'd like to up the standings in the airlines, and in the future, we're gonna do a study to see how much what you can get from the airlines here. But pretty much, as you know, there's not many classes out there. We are the only ones that do a class at a major airport for free, and so we'd like to improve on that and get a little bit more awareness on the part of the airlines. Or a lot of you have asked me specifically, are the flight attendants trained for to handle fearful flyers? And I'd say just basically no. If they're trained to help with medical problems on the airplane, but not so much the problem itself. Okay, and now just a quick word again. Dieter mentioned the October 26th class coming up. And by the way, there was a link there. I should have highlighted that. October 26th, Saturday morning, in Pacoima, which is just north of the Burbank Airport. We'll be doing our next Cleared for Takeoff 201 class and 301 class to follow right after that. And we're going to be flying from Burbank to Oakland. So if you're going to be in the area and you have ever thought about taking a class for fear flying, we recommend this. It's just a great experience for people. We have the benefit of a real cabin mock-up there, and as well as an airport mock-up. This is a shot of Eric and I doing the class in the cabin there. We spend the morning and a little bit ease into the afternoon with talking about fear of flying and coping strategies, and then we do a quick briefing, and then we migrate to the Burbank Airport. And for those who signed up and bought their tickets on Southwest, we jump on a Southwest flight, go to up to Oakland in this case, and we'll have a time to grab a hamburger or something quick snack there on the ground, and turn around and come back. And then we have a really nice little celebration at the end. We debrief the trip that day, and there's a bunch of smiling faces from our March class over there. And there's nothing like it. If you've ever wanted to get over your fear of flying, this is the way to do it. And it's just a 1-2 punch. Everybody is pretty calm by the time they get on the airplane, headed up to in this case, Oakland. Eric probably will throw out his 2 cents about he catches all these people sleeping who were reportedly, just a few hours before terrified to fly, and not so much by the time we get them on the airplane there. But anyway, it's a great opportunity, and so we recommend you going over there. And if you want to fly, make sure you follow the instructions and purchase your ticket on Southwest Airlines. So,
okay, so the medication topic is obviously one that I want to point out. Albert said, I need to take a pill that will work right away and keep me knocked out for the entire flight.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that there's a pill like that, or that it would be.
Like, yeah, there are pills like that, but we don't recommend them. Yeah. They come with a lot of warnings. Yeah.
But the truth is, medication can help, and we're definitely going to talk about it. But nothing comes without side effects. So I'm just going to bring up the poll question here one more time, just because it's it's really it's a topic that not just in our group, but we're part of other fear flying groups, and it just comes up seemingly, almost every day when people are flying.
Yeah, everybody wants to know, should I take medications? And we live in a medication age, and it's a really valid question. And we got a little bit of information here to offer that. Does it help or does it hinder? Well, if it's working for you and you don't have to fly but once or twice a year, maybe that is the way to go for you. But we have some information here that we're going to present to you that adds a little bit more light on the subject. There was a study done at Stanford several years ago, and they had 2 flights. And on the first flight, fearful flyers received either a placebo or a Xanax tablet. And then for those people who received Xanax, they did in fact report less anxiety on the first flight. However, when they measured their physiology, they had higher heart rates and respiration rates, indicating that the drug was merely masking the anxiety. So it works on the part of the brain called the amygdala, and it did in fact, basically anesthetize it. But the downside to that, I think if you can put that next slide up there, is that when you do that, it hinders the benefits that you get from exposure. So on the second flight, of those flyers who received Xanax on the first flight, they did in fact experience panic attacks. So 71 people who got Xanax on the first flight experienced a panic attack on the second flight, compared to 29% of the group that received just the placebo on the first flight. They had panic attacks. So 3 times as many people had panic attacks, and they were in the group that got the Xanax on the first flight. So, and these are in the family of drugs called benzodiazepines, and they seem to hinder the benefits of exposure to flying. And you've heard us talk about it. The best remedy for overcoming fear of flying is exposure. And so if you really want the long-term cure, it's best if you can reduce or eliminate your reliance on medications, because it's going to affect your brain's ability to create new neuron pathways. And that's the long and the short of it. So as I said, if that's what gets you on the flight the next time, so be it. But we always recommend getting working in consultation with your doctor, and your doctor, make that a doctor who knows something about medications related to anxiety and depression, for example. And if you need to, then maybe you can work with him to have a smaller dose, so that you can still have enough consciousness there to employ some of the techniques and strategies to cope that
Ron,
we advertise in the program. Yeah.
Here's something that I usually tell my
Okay.
clients. It's a different study, but the point of it is, taking medication and working on what actually makes you afraid to fly is not mutually exclusive. So they actually could work hand in hand. So you could use the medication, if it works for you, in conjunction with the tools and the strategies and all the things that you are learning here, or that you are picking up from other sources. Because the truth of the matter is, whether it's just masking it and you just get by, and or more importantly, you actually want to become free of that debilitating mental dialogue that starts for many of you long before you even get on the plane. And that's really what we hear all the time here at Fearless Flight. We hear from you all the time that, oh my God, it starts when I'm thinking about booking my tickets, or it starts when I'm thinking about, going towards the airport or something like that. So medication definitely can be helpful, but just as Captain Ron said, you got to actually work with a practitioner that understands the drugs. And I'm gonna say most GPs, at least I can speak for Canada, first-hand knowledge, because I've worked with doctors and psychiatrists for over 10 years in my own practice. Just because they can prescribe a medication does not mean that they know anything about it, other than the fact sheet that they get from from the pharmaceutical companies. So do
Yeah.
your own
And it,
diligence on that.
yeah. Well, and one thing I wanted to add is when it comes to medications, you know, it's we're learning more and more as we learn about the brain, about medications, and what we thought we knew turns out not to be true all the time. There's a fact out about statins, which are the category of drugs widely used for people who have cholesterol issues, and your chances of a statin working to actually help you is one in what is it, 1 in 15, I believe it is. So 1 out of every 15 people are going to be someone that statins help. The chances of you getting a side effect, an adverse side effect, ranging from minimal to significant, is 1 in 20. So you put those together. So if you use statins, for example, your chances are I think it was 15 times, 20 times more likely to have a side effect than you are, or 20 times more likely to have a side effect than you are to be in the group that benefits. So it does, what I'm saying is, adding on what Dieter says, we recommend to use that if you need to, and in conjunction with a physician. So you don't just go blindly doing that, because one of the side effects, if you read the bottle for Xanax, is anxiety. So go figure. All right. So use caution and use some good judgment when you're doing that. Okay. We want to move on to the
our aviation news roundup.
Yeah, we'll talk about the aviation news. Last week, Eric came on and talked about this whole thing with the 737 NG cracks that they found. These were older airplanes, older in terms of the number of cycles on them, which Eric will explain, and they were transitioning some of them to cargo planes, and when they can reconfigure them, they have greater visibility on some of the major working parts or the critical parts of the airplane. So Eric's going to talk about, give you an update to that issue, what we found. And this was prompted by Sandy, who brought this question up, because when she read it in the news, of course, she was scheduled to fly on a 737 on a vacation, and she was wondering about that. So what's the latest on that, Eric?
Well, the day after, and first of all, we weren't incorrect, but we misspoke a little, talking about this only affecting freight airplanes, which was not correct. The original cracks were discovered in a freighter that had 35,000 cycles, and that's how the FAA and Boeing said, "Oh, gee, we better have a look." So the night after last week's show, on Wednesday, this airworthiness directive, AD. A service letter was issued saying, here's what we need to do. They had inspected a bunch more airplanes, found 23 more at that time, causing them to say, all right, we need to break off a time period to start looking at the airplanes. And so what they did was they issued the AD saying that airplanes that have more than, is it 22,600 cycles, between 22,600 and 30,000 cycles, have to be inspected within 1,000 cycles. And we'll talk about cycles in a second. And any aircraft with more than 30,000 cycles has to be inspected within 7 days. And when we say cycles, a cycle is an accurate way, more accurate way of measuring wear and longevity on an airliner than just hours of operational running. And one cycle is the airplane starting up, running, taking off, being pressurized, landing, unpressurizing, and pulling into the gate or whatever, and shutting down the engines. That's one cycle. And that's an accurate, more accurate, as I said, measure of wear in the airplane. And so the FAA and Boeing use that to say, what intervals do we need to look for this problem possibly appearing? And so the domestic US carriers and lots of people worldwide will have airplanes affected by this and have to take a look and make sure they're okay. And I remember reading in the original article that that pickle fork, and Dieter will show you a picture of the part in a minute, it's a great picture, was designed, the design life was supposed to last the design life of the airplane of 90,000 cycles or so. So the fact that they're picking these up, if you're familiar with a standard deviation loop, that they're picking these cracks up at far less than the lifetime expectancy of the airplane it's of serious consideration. and it needs to be looked at. And the companies and the FAA and Boeing are doing that. If that makes sense.
To me, Eric, that's kind of like the good news and the bad news all rolled into one. So it's disappointing, certainly to the people who predicted the number of cycles that they would generate without showing a problem like this. That's not great news. But the good news is they are picking them up, and that speaks to the scrutiny of commercial aviation. And we don't minimize the bad news, but we sure want to shout the good news from the highest places. So.
Mm-hmm. So can you guys talk a little bit about pickle fork?
Ron, you can dive in if you want. Other than what's
what this is that there are two main components to an airplane for structure or for strength. One is the main wing spar, and that's the thing you look in the picture there that's on the screen right now. That's the thing that goes from wingtip to wingtip. Okay, and that makes sense. That's what makes the fuselage connected or bounce up and down on the wings. And then there's another one called the keel beam. That's a beam that goes from the nose to the tail of the airplane. And those are all connected together at the pickle fork. And so the pickle fork is really a significant structural member of the airplane. So it's a very important member. And this inspection takes about, I think they said about no more than an hour. And what they do is, the fact that they can even look at it is fascinating to me. They use a camera that's basically on a flexible piece of like a garden hose of sorts. It's about 3 feet long or so, and they can access it from the main landing gear wheel well, where the gear raises up into the belly of the airplane. And there's a lot of stuff down there. But again, I'm amazed just at the technical expertise of people. One, to detect it. Two, to be able to see and inspect the problem. And then three, to reconcile it. So
that stunned me as well, that they could inspect and find that quickly. And we'll throw in that's likely the reason they found it on a freighter wasn't because of the age, but because of the airplane being more opened up than a passenger service airplane, and their ability to see with the naked eye some things that they wouldn't see otherwise. And somebody said, "Hey, what's that?" And
I think one thing to really emphasize, Eric, is the fact that because these airplanes, we didn't talk about it, but airliners typically they move from passenger carrying to freighters when they get to where their inspection cycles cost more, are more cost than getting a new airplane for the airlines. So when they move that over, that means that they found it on an airplane which had a much longer history of use. So that's good news, because that would mean that it's less likely to be found on a regular mainline passenger carrying airplane. However, now that they have found it, they will now check all the mainline airplanes. So the likelihood is that that if we find them, that's the next part that I think we'll want to track and we'll report back to everybody, is if they find anybody on the airframes that are still carrying passengers. Because to me, that's the more interesting part about this in terms of if I'm buying a ticket on an airplane.
Well, on top of that redundancy, both Boeing and the FAA will say, well, gee, if we had this problem on the new gen 737, how are the triples looking and how's the 78 looking and everything else? They're going to crawl around and look at this exact same part on the other airplanes without a detected problem and make sure that everything's is as they intended to start with.
And if you're a viewer and you look back through the themes of the shows, when we talk about aircraft safety in particular, we'll be honest with you and tell you, yep, we have had tragic accidents in the past, but no matter whether there was a tragedy or whether there was no loss of life or injury, what you find out is, like the Sully accident, which I talked about just last week, 35 findings from that accident, 5 of which only directly related to the Sully accident, and 30 that they found related to other areas of safety on the airplane. And this is yet another example of how this one finding here will not just affect the 737 NG fleet, but it will spread out and it will affect aviation in general, because they'll look at similar findings or similar pickle forks, if you will, in other airplanes. And that's the good news. And that's why it keeps getting safer and safer and safer. And the fact that, in response to Sandy's question, you're not going to get on an airplane or she's already flown, but your airplane is not going to be one of those that hasn't been inspected, because that's the nature of an AD when they do it. So anyway, okay. Any questions on that, Dieter, that have come in that we need to address?
Not on the cracks thus far. So, but
Okay.
there are a couple of comments about medication, and Hedda
Okay.
said for the shorter flights she doesn't need any, and for transatlantic she uses a very low dose. And
Okay.
I'm gonna say, because Hedda has been really following us and watching, and engaging with us on the shows. And I'm gonna just say that I think with that continued exposure to aviation knowledge, and it'll get better and better, and there will come a time when you don't need the medication to help you create a better dialogue in your mind that creates a better experience for you.
And that
So,
dialogue is the stories we tell ourselves. That's why our job is to change the way you think, or help you change the way you think about flying. Because believe it or not, once that story changes, you don't need medication anymore. You get on the airplane and you're not worried about the length of the flight. Length of the flight is one of the common things. People, from a superstitious nature, some people think, okay, if I made it for an hour, I shouldn't push my luck for 2 hours. Airplanes don't work like that. The engine doesn't care how long it's been running, and it just keeps on flying. So more power to you. We use it if you need in consultation with your doctor, and but use good judgment and keep coming back here so that you can get off of that completely. All right. Okay. So now, last thing in the show here is to talk a little bit about the 201 class in Phoenix. So we're going October 26th, and barely 2 weeks later, we've got our last 201 class of the year here in the Phoenix area. Again, it's a 201-301 combination. The 301 is the flight portion of the class that happens afterwards. It's normally a $197 tuition on top of the tuition for the 201. But if you fly with us that same day, we waive that fee. And the 201 is completely free if you come and take the 201 with us. And we, by the way, if you're not, if you're an alumni, you can come back, or if you're somebody who didn't fly before, you can come back. So check the link there and get that information as well. We will we'll get airport transfer from there to the from the hotel where we hold it in Phoenix to the airport. We have a pre-flight briefing, just like I mentioned in the Burbank class, and lots of in-flight support. You'll have me and Dieter and our merry band of coaches to go with you. So you'll be, we try to keep that ratio down of no more than about 4 or 5 people to each coach that we have. We have a really nice post-flight debrief, get a certificate, and you're on your way to Fearless Flight there. So come on out, take a look at that. If you're in Phoenix or plan to be, or you're afraid to fly and you wanted to get over this, the 201 class on November 9th is the place to be on there. So, and we Dieter flashed a slide up there. We have somebody that I think asked a question about this whole October 20th of 2020 deal on your driver's license. So
as a matter of fact, it was Heather who put this in the comments last week, and I wanted to pull it up today, and our very own Elaine has some first-hand information about the driver's license. So Elaine, I'm gonna just take it away, Elaine.
Okay, great. Yeah, as of October 1st in 2020, you will not be able to board a domestic flight without an enhanced driver's license. In the state of California, that's where I live. That means it's real ID, and I'm sure it's called that in most states. And essentially, what you'll need to do is go down to your Department of Motor Vehicles or your motor vehicle department, depending on your state again, and go in person. You'll have to bring a birth certificate, verification of your residence. That's usually your car registration. Let's see, birth certificate. Your social security card, if you have it. And I think that's about it. And the thing is, they are so backlogged that I booked my appointment way back in April, and my appointment was 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So if your license is in that renewal cycle, definitely schedule an in-person appointment as soon as you can. Here in California, we've had people going into Bakersfield from Orange County because that was the only DMV that had available appointments on time prior to your license expiring. So the best thing to do, don't wait till your license expires. Go ahead and take care of it as soon as you can, and access your state's motor vehicle department website for the latest information on the documentation you'll need to bring, because in California, there were a lot of snafus. I had a neighbor go through that process very early on, and California's adoption of the Real ID, they actually sent her home to get her social security card because it wasn't mentioned anywhere you have to bring your social security card. So about all I can recommend is be sure and take care of it before the October 1st deadline of next year, and bring plenty of patience. Bring games on your phone. Don't bring your little kids because they'll go insane. There's a lot of waiting, even with an appointment. Bring your sense of humor, bring your documentation, and bring your patience, because at the DMV, they have no sense of urgency. They just go at their own pace, and they'll stop and they'll talk with their coworkers. And I'm very type A. I have no patience. I've been known to. Yes.
Elaine, I'm sorry, let me ask you this. If anybody screws this up, which I'm sure nobody would, you can get by with a US passport until you have your Real ID done, right?
Yeah, and you can get by with a US passport or a US passport card until you can get the license situation straightened out. If you're broke like me and don't travel internationally, you're going to need that license in order to board a domestic flight. In some cases, it might be cheaper to get a passport or a passport card. That's what some of my friends have done. But in my case, I went ahead and paid the renewal fee for the license. I think in California, it's about $38. And in some cases, they will have you take a road test. In my case, I had to take a vision test. So it does involve an in-person appointment at the DMV, unfortunately.
Yeah, basically Arizona, I can add a little bit of optimism for Arizona. It's not quite as backed up, but you do the same process. You look online. It's basically getting a new driver's license with enhanced features, and that is they got to verify who you are. That's why they ask for you can, one of the forms of ID is a utility bill or something like that. But it's pretty well spelled out on the DMV website over here in Arizona, and mine was pretty pleasant. But you do need a sense of humor anytime you go into a government agency. In my
I'm going to book my appointment in Rapid City, South Dakota as soon as we hang up. This sounds crazy.
Yeah, there you go. Eric's got the right idea.
Unfortunately, you'll need a South Dakota driver's license to do that.
Oh.
So,
yeah, there's one catch, but you have the right idea. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, Elaine, and everybody out there. It is a little under a year away, but if you're like me, before you know it, you'll be a year older and you need that thing. So yeah, it's go ahead and get it. The early, you can pretty much guarantee the earlier you go, the less hassle you'll have. If you go at the last minute, you'll have the worst results. So
all right,
okay. Any last minute comments or anything?
Diane is confirming what you said, Ron. Hi, Diane, by the way, and congratulations. Diane, our FearlessFlight helper, is also a flight attendant, and I think an Embraer jet, right? That's what, maybe you can put that in the comments, but you just got certified to work on an Embraer, I think, what is it, RJ 75 or
175?
175.
Yeah, usually 175s.
Yeah,
145.
I just saw the happy picture earlier today, so that's really cool. And last but not least, I just wanna let everybody know we didn't really have time at all today to get into this, but we do have our new book, and because people were asking, is your book out? So we do. We have it out. You can purchase it on Amazon, or, and I like to say that, wherever books are sold.
Yeah.
So we'll talk
And
more
that's
about
what
it at a different show.
Yeah. Between a 15-minute coaching session and getting the book, that should, if you have no idea what to do, that should be, those should be two of the highest priorities and where to start. So we'll put in the after notes, if you want to do a link for a 15-minute coaching call, please do that. And yeah, get the book.
All right. Well,
Okay.
Captain Ron, enjoy Hawaii.
Yes.
And everybody else out there, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Eric and
You're
Dieter.
welcome.
And thanks, Diane, for adding those comments. And
Mhm.
so we'll see you here again next week, Tuesday night at Fearless Flight Live. Be here or be square. Bye-bye.
See you next